Tonight we begin with an operation that Kremlin officials had previously described as impossible. Western intelligence agencies had tracked developments in real time, and Ukrainian special forces carried out the mission with remarkable accuracy. It did not take place on distant battlefields or in occupied regions, but in central Moscow itself, within close range of the Kremlin. A single night that brought disruption to the Russian capital. A single night that led Vladimir Putin to say a word he has carefully avoided for years: losses. A single night that showed no part of Russia is completely beyond Ukraine's reach. What Ukraine carried out crossed a line that Moscow believed would never be approached. And when that line was crossed, Putin did not respond with his usual strong rhetoric. He did not speak of extreme retaliation. He did not promise immediate consequences. Instead, he appeared before cameras and, for the first time since the conflict began, acknowledged that Russia had suffered setbacks. Ukraine acted with detailed intelligence that should concern every Russian official and delivered a message that resonated inside the Kremlin itself. This conflict will not unfold on only one side's terms. For weeks, there had been signs, not official announcements or public briefings, just subtle signals that Kyiv was preparing something unusual. Ukraine has carried out operations inside Russian territory before, but those actions followed a clear pattern. Energy facilities, storage sites, air bases, command locations, all outside the capital. But this week, that pattern changed. Those who monitor Ukrainian capabilities know the indicators: increased surveillance activity, unusual system testing near borders, specialized units no longer visible in their usual areas, and then sudden silence from intelligence channels that had been active for months. All of that went quiet about 72 hours ago, and when Ukraine's most specialized units go quiet, it usually means something carefully planned is underway. Early this morning, around 3:15 a.m. Moscow time, residents in central Moscow reported multiple blasts in districts near the Kremlin. Within minutes, videos appeared online showing buildings affected less than 2 kilometers from Red Square. This was not random. This was not an accident. This was deliberate and targeted. Western officials first believed the action might be mostly symbolic, dramatic, but limited. Within hours, that assessment changed. Ukrainian forces had struck at least 3 significant locations inside the Kremlin district, including what analysts believe was a military coordination site operating under civilian cover. When a country at war shows it can reach sensitive locations in the opponent's capital, the psychological impact is enormous. The Kremlin's response was unexpected. It was not forceful or confident. It was restrained. Putin described the events as serious and destabilizing, and then acknowledged losses, a term he has avoided throughout the conflict. Within hours, air defense systems around Moscow were raised to their highest alert level, not seen since the early phase of the war. Emergency security measures were activated across the city, and state media, usually quick to control the narrative, remained unusually quiet for several hours. That silence spoke volumes. Ukrainian intelligence later confirmed what Western agencies had already concluded. The operation had been prepared for months. Ukraine acted before Russian defenses could adjust. They disrupted communications connecting leadership with field commanders. They targeted logistical coordination centers believed to be hidden from public view. In short, they demonstrated deep intelligence access inside Russian security structures. This is why Putin's public admission mattered. The image of a fully secure capital had been shaken. Ukraine achieved this not through widespread damage, but through carefully selected targets that limited civilian risk while producing strategic impact. This left Russian defenses looking unprepared and uncertain. Analysts believe the operation was designed to challenge a long-standing assumption inside Russia, that Moscow itself was insulated from consequences. For years, life in the capital continued largely unchanged, while Ukrainian cities endured constant pressure. That distance helped maintain domestic stability. Tonight, that sense of distance disappeared. Defense analysts described Russia's internal security posture as deeply unsettled, suddenly forced to confront a reality long dismissed as impossible. As reports continued, more details emerged. long-range systems entered Russian airspace through gaps in defensive coverage. Emergency aircraft were launched. Cyber units reportedly interfered with local emergency communications for a short period, slowing coordination. Ukrainian intelligence later released exact coordinates of the locations they targeted, showing they knew precisely what they were aiming for. This was not a single-method operation. It was coordinated across multiple domains. Once again, Ukraine demonstrated capabilities Russia did not expect. Throughout this conflict, assumptions about Ukrainian limits have repeatedly proven incorrect. Putin believed Moscow was secure. He believed defenses were sufficient. He believed daily life in major cities would remain separate from the realities of war. Tonight challenged all of those beliefs. This moment is especially sensitive because Putin is already under significant internal strain. Military leaders are demanding more resources. Economic elites want relief from restrictions. Security agencies are facing difficult questions, and citizens are seeing images they never expected to see from their own capital. Leaders under this kind of pressure often react emotionally rather than strategically. NATO's statement was carefully balanced. It supported Ukraine's right to target military infrastructure while warning against uncontrolled escalation. Officials emphasized that the sites affected were linked to military coordination, not civilian services. That distinction matters legally and politically. Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed the nation with calm but firm language. He said Russia believed its capital was beyond reach, and that belief was now proven wrong. He said that any site supporting the occupation of Ukrainian land is a legitimate target, regardless of distance. And he reminded viewers that Ukraine did not start this conflict, but will act where necessary to bring it to an end. Alongside the Moscow operation, Ukrainian forces also carried out coordinated actions in occupied Crimea, and cyber activity disrupted command networks in several sectors. Intelligence officials hinted that further sensitive sites inside Russia are already mapped. When multiple fronts activate at once, it usually signals a shift in strategy. Analysts are now considering several scenarios. Increased pressure on Ukrainian infrastructure, intensified internal investigations within Russia, or unpredictable decisions driven by political embarrassment. None of these are stable outcomes. But one point is clear tonight. Ukraine is prepared to act in ways Russia did not anticipate. Narratives are being tested. Russia wants to maintain the idea that the conflict has little impact at home. Ukraine is determined to prove otherwise. NATO is attempting to manage escalation while maintaining support. More details will come in the hours ahead. But what is already known matters greatly. Ukraine reached central Moscow with precision operations. Putin publicly acknowledged setbacks. And the long-standing image of complete security has been disrupted. What happens next depends on decisions being made inside the Kremlin right now. But Ukraine has shown it can act far beyond what was once assumed. And tonight, for the first time in this conflict, the sense of safety in Moscow has been seriously questioned. Because tonight, Ukraine delivered a message that will not be forgotten. There are no guaranteed safe zones. Distance does not equal immunity. And major cities are no longer separate from the reality of this conflict. This story is still unfolding. But one thing is certain. Ukraine reached Moscow. Putin acknowledged losses. And the nature of this conflict has entered a new phase.